We were talking about it on Monday. Like, are we sure at this rate Jerod Mayo is back next year? And Florio says they are, and he wrote this yesterday. He does his power rankings every Tuesday. He said at this rate, Jerod Mayo could talk his way right out of a job. And he said it there on PFT Live. This has been echoed as well by Greg Bedard, who doesn't think Mayo is, quote-unquote, assured of a second season. So could he talk his way out of a job? Is he going to give Robert Kraft no choice? This is one thing you now see in the NFL. Coaches don't always come back for year number 2. It used to be you sign a new coach, they're good for 2 or 3
just
years.
Carolina. They never keep a coach for 2 years.
Thank you. Like, you don't. Steve Wilkes didn't get a second year. Frank Reich didn't get a second year. Urban Meyer didn't survive year 1. Like, you see that a lot.
And what a group he could join.
I mean,
Urban Meyer, Steve Wilkes,
is
Frank Reich.
Mayo closer to that or closer to the good coaches?
He is closer to that, for sure. Now, I don't think those coaches that we named had half the relationship with the owner that Jerod Mayo has. That's why I still think Jerod Mayo is safe for a second season. Now, you could also argue through 7 weeks, could it be any worse? Like, short of being 0-7, that'd be the one obvious, like, it'd be worse. Could it really be much worse? You've gotten blown out of most of these games. The owner loves the international game, for better or worse. You lost to a very bad team, one of the worst teams in the league, in front of everybody out in England. You've lost like 6 straight games. The one silver lining is your rookie quarterback finally started and looks decent for 2 games. That's like the one thing you can kind of hold up. How much credit does Mayo get for that? I don't think much.
No.
But like you do have that. So I think there's enough standing in the way, shields, if you will, that'll keep Jerod Mayo back. The biggest thing is I don't think Robert Kraft wants to admit he was wrong. His gut was wrong. 5 years ago, he picked this guy, loves this guy, blah, 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 Thunder Buddy. I don't think he's going to let go of the Thunder Buddy after 1 year. He's also in a spot where Robert Kraft is. The year's up. They're 1 win, 2 win, 3 win team. Fire Van Pelt. See, guys, we made a move. We got a new offensive coordinator. And if you really want to get nuts, you could fire Elliott Wolf. I don't think he would do that after 1 year on the job. But I think you're more likely to get rid of him and AVP, hell, maybe even Covington, than you would Mayo. That's
right.
my
could
guess.
Could they blow all those guys out before Jerod Mayo?
Yes,
sure,
because
possibly.
Because Belichick lost the job last year, part because they were 4-13, but even more so because he drafted all these clowns in the first and second round, and guys that aren't even on the team. Like, I think he was more blamed, certainly publicly, for the drafts and the state of the roster, whereas Mayo has nothing to do with that.
So you've said this before, and I agree with it. And you guys can jump in, 617-779-7937. A lot of Celtics talk early in the show. We'll get back to the Celtics raising the banner last night. They look unbeatable. Tatum was awesome. They did shoot a lot of threes. They were a bit shaky on defense, but overall, not a lot of nitpicks for the C's last night. We'll talk to Robert Horry about it at 12:45. We'll get into Would You Rathers coming up about 15 minutes from now on Would You Rather Wednesday on Jones and Keefe. But you said this before, Keefe, and I do agree with it. A lot of people may have felt they'd be 1-6 at this point in time. So the record in and of itself isn't the indictment on Mayo. It's what's going on off the field. Like players getting in trouble with the law, players getting mixed up with the police in Providence, players up to God knows what in London, which people are really not happy with your questions.
I hate that
Vinny
question.
from The Challenge.
Oh, Vinny from The Challenge, you coward. He hasn't responded. I wrote back.
Something called Keegan Stifle over at Nesson really took you to task, Keith.
I know.
I was unaware of his work.
Not one but 2 rivals.
But my goodness, we've developed some rivals over asking something that one of Christian Gonzalez's teammates brought up.
Kendrick Bourne brought it up.
Nesson.com angry at you.
Wow.
Vinny from The Challenge angry at you, Keith,
I almost didn't come to work today.
for asking the tough questions around there. I'd like to hear something called Keegan Stifle, his next question, in a press conference. Trust me, if I ever hear it, we'll make sure we dissect it.
Everything else.
Yeah. I hope it's not cringe-inducing
Oh, my God.
and dumb like your questions were.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's all the off-field stuff with Mayo as well. And now you have Mayo correcting himself left and right, having to walk things back every single time he opens his mouth, calling the team soft, Bill undermining him on a national stage. That, to me, is the real problem, Keith. It's not just the record. It's not being 1-6. It's not the team getting worse seemingly week over week out over week. They can't stop the run on defense. They're getting shredded on his side of the football. It's not just that. It's also everything else that comes along with it.
You feel like more wins next season than this past season? Like, is that?
I do feel that way.
That's not going to help him.
So we got you on record.
You got me on record.
Yeah. All right.
That
good.
we're going to win more than 4 games.
Yeah.
I'm on record.
You're on record.
Absolutely.
All right. Good. All right.
You gotta get going. You gotta get on a little bit of a heater right now.
Time to wake up.
If you want to get to 5 wins, you got to get going a little bit. No, and I also think it's one of those things where knowing a team's going to be bad, right? And Robert Kraft over the last 4 years has really changed his goals and like expectations. Remember, it was like winning a Super Bowl, winning a playoff game, making the playoffs, just having fun. Like it's kind of changed each year.
Yeah.
And so even this year, I forget who was talking with him. Might have been an NFL Network thing where it was like he didn't want to put even like a win total on it.
Nope.
Like, so that's how far it is fallen. And it's one thing to, before the year begins, say, yeah, they might be 1-6, they might be 2-5. And you're like, yeah, that'd be tough. But then when you're living it,
it's
and it's a week in between each game, and you just lost, you got blown out by the Niners, you got blown out by the Jets. You have the ugliest game maybe football fans have ever seen against the Dolphins. You blow a 10-point lead to the Jaguars. Like, that's so much different than me just telling you what the record is.
Right.
Like other bad teams around the league that we're not watching.
You have to live it in real time.
Yes, it's way different, right? Like, you're like, oh, the Titans suck, but I'm not watching the Titans every week.
No.
So, like, I don't really know just how bad it is. But when you're in it every single week and really no end in sight, much different.
They're a joke.
Yeah.
They're inept. And no one expected this level of ineptitude. No one expected them to look this bad,
Right.
and have this many distractions off the field. Mayo to look so over his head. Like, no one expected that. No one. And so it's worse. And so here's the calculus for me, Keefe. Again, and I've said this a bunch. When the bullseye turns to Kraft, and he has to play the game now where, yeah, he looks like a clown for handpicking Jerod Mayo 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Shoving Bill out the door, which I was okay with, putting Mayo in his place, not even bothering to interview anyone else.
So that's insane to me.
And comparing it to picking a wife.
Right.
Like, does he look like a clown for that? Sure. But, is it a popular PR move to fire Jerod Mayo? And does he look at it and say, all right, this is where I can get some people back on my side? Like,
do you think he has it in him to go full, I was wrong, and now we're going to do the process completely different than how I did it before?
I mean, you would have to do some interviews. You can't just like.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Almost like the joke is like you sneaky had another guy in waiting. Like you've been grooming like somebody else to be the coach.
T.C. McCurdy.
You're like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
I just think that is going to be, at some point, Robert Kraft is probably going to have a press conference where he either sticks by Mayo and you're like, all right, what is that? Or he says he got it wrong and now has to hire somebody else, and then everybody's going to start questioning every gut decision he's ever made.
Right. But I think that's the lesser of two evils in all honesty. And let me give you an example.
It's the quicker way to move on probably, but I just don't see it happening.
Okay. Yeah. Let me give you an example, though. Mike Vrabel's out there and available. Now, look, that would probably be another sham hiring process, and maybe they do interviews for show, but we'd all look at it like Vrabel was the guy. Supposedly they wanted Vrabel last year when he was in the owner's box and he was sitting there sidling up to Robert Kraft.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Would Vrabel take it?
Okay, let's say he would.
Okay.
Let's say Vrabel would. I don't know if he would either.
So I just think real quick, sorry to interrupt, but if you are looking at the Patriots and they fire Mayo, so they fired Bill Belichick.
Yep.
They gave 1 year to Jerod Mayo, and now they're like, we want you to have the job. We want you to have it forever. I'd be like, you just fired those two guys? Like, the best coach ever, and then, like, you're one of your best friends? You fired both of those guys? Like, what chance do I have?
Yeah, I mean, again, does Vrabel have a lot of options?
No.
We thought Vrabel was going to have options last year, and he didn't. I thought he was going to be a red-hot coaching candidate. He didn't have any options. He's like an assistant on the Browns.
But maybe part of him is like, you didn't even give me a sniff? Remember there was that joke that they were like, maybe they would, and maybe they were talking about it. Remember when Crowley, he brought him back for the Hall of Fame thing?
I get it. So look, right. We were just talking about this. So if Vrabel doesn't want the job, then that's another story. But just from a PR standpoint, you fire Mayo and replace him with Mike Vrabel.
I think that'd be a win.
That's a PR win.
That's a win.
And so I think Kraft might look at it at some point and go, I need wins, and if I take an L I take an L on my gut, and I look like a clown for putting Mayo in place, and Bill and all his cronies, Matt Patricia with the potato chips all over his chest, like they're gonna mock them and have a field day with it. But it will be popular with your fan base. Kraft may reach a point where he goes, I need wins,
and people do.
And this
move
is
on.
A win.
People do move on quick.
Yeah.
Like, that is one thing. There's always something else around the league, around sports, just in the news where you could be like, yeah, I made a mistake, but I corrected that mistake.
Right.
Like, I would rather you change course, right? Like John Henry, all of a sudden, if he had a complete change of heart on how he wanted to go about it, I'd be like, I don't know what the hell these last 5 years were about, but if you're signing Juan Soto now, then like, okay, I'll take it.
Well, let me give you a Celtics analogy. You made this earlier in the show, and it's a good one. Like, Brad Stevens got on the job for 2 seconds, and he's like, Kemba, you're done. And it's like, okay, like we made a mistake. We're moving on. Let's do this, right?
He didn't even set up his office yet, and he traded Kemba Walker. He was
so
I want
like,
nothing to do with him.
We made a mistake. We're bringing back Al Horford, which at the time I thought you were just taking on a contract. Turns out he had a ton left in the tank.
Yep.
And so you admit a mistake. And I guess maybe that was easier for Brad because it wasn't his signing.
No, this is like really personal.
Yeah.
That's why if I had to bet right now, is Mayo back next year, I would still bet yes.
Okay, but what was your percentage he would survive the year in the offseason?
100%?
What is it? What is it now?
75.
Yeah, so it's dropped.
It's lower.
It's dropped.
Yeah.
And
and I think like Florio's point, one thing you also couldn't expect is, all right, they're 1-6. Okay, maybe you did expect that. But him coming on there and be like, we got a soft team.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, they're playing soft. It's like, wow. On the one hand, it's refreshing that you have a person talking, but like, does he even believe it? Or does he have to be told? So he gives you his initial thoughts, then he has a meeting and he realizes like, oh, that's not playing well. I got to now change it.
Yeah.
So now I don't really feel that way. And it's like, dude, what a mess.
Yeah.
Everybody's head is spinning.
We're
going to
burn cash. He's going to walk that back.
We're bringing in talent 1,000%. So have a lot of cap space.
Love it.
And cash. Ready to burn some cash.
Ready to burn some cash.
That was from the same interview with the Greg Hill show where he said the 4 wins and burn some cash.
He had to walk back right away that they were he basically gave away they were drafting a quarterback. He had to walk that back. He had to walk back, burn some cash. He's going to have to walk back winning more than 4 games.
Yeah.
He had to walk back how soft they are. He bungled the whole quarterback announcement early. Remember all that? Where he's like, well, we're going to talk to the team first, and they're going to find out. They all found out on social media. Like, everything is a mess. Everything. For all
our pets' heads are falling off.
Seriously. Yeah. For all the talk of Optum, Keefe, do they teach PR there? Like, I imagine they teach PR there. For all the talk
Did he
of,
not take the course? Maybe he didn't take the online... 30-minute course. You gotta watch those videos, Jerod.
Yeah, were you there that day? Because for all the talk about Optum and living in the corporate world, did they teach PR there? Because it doesn't feel that way.
And a guy who worked in the corporate world, and he also did a media job.
Oh God!
How could he be so bad at both?
Yeah, maybe we got to go back and dissect how well he did in the media.
Because it doesn't seem like he's doing a lot coaching wise.
No,
so you would think he would be like.
Very
perfect
little,
kind of
shockingly
voice
little, yeah.
No, but like if all like the run, like all the things, and it's low on the list of responsibilities.
Yep.
Bill Belichick snorted into the mic for 20 years and was the best coach there was. So I'm not saying you have to be good at that, but that's one thing that you thought he would be good at. And
he's the worst at it.
He's so bad at it because he's not consistent. He keeps changing his tune.
Well, this is one that I feel a little bit more when people are like, "Oh, you shoved Bill out the door." And now you want to shove his replacement out the door? It's like, well, I never wanted the replacement.
Nobody wanted Mayo. Both things can be true. Okay. You can want Belichick gone, and you can not want Mayo now.
Those can
both be true.
Here's one I feel a little bit more, and I think is more fair.
Okay.
Bill said nothing for years. You guys are mad about it. Now Mayo says too much, and you're mad about that. Like,
no. So
I do think there should be a happy medium in between Bill saying nothing and Mayo saying too much and then having to correct it. But I think that's a more fair criticism.
I understand that criticism, but I'm not telling Mayo to shut up. I'm just saying, like, what is it? How do you feel?
Right.
Don't feel one way on Sunday and then differently on Monday.
Once you say it, stick with it.
Yeah, like, I'm happy. Like, I think it's better. I prefer it. I think, because I look at it's also an entertainment product. Like, things don't have to be so secretive. It's not that big of a deal. And so if you say that a guy is injured versus, like, well, we'll have to look at the tape, like, what's the huge difference there?
Right.
Give us a little intel. We're very invested in this team. But if you're going to have these pretty bold statements that the team is soft, then the next time you speak, you're like, no, playing soft. That's why you're like, all right, maybe I get why Bill did it, because he never had to correct himself because he never said anything to begin with. Mayo now, like, he's making it more difficult on himself.
What was your analogy with arguing with your wife again?
Oh, it's like, you said I was a psycho. I didn't say you're a psycho. I said you're acting like a psycho. Or you can choose some other words as well if you wanted to.
There's a lot you could fill in there. So Mike Florio thinks Jerod Mayo could talk his way right out of a job.
Well, the other crazy part, like
Greg Bedard thinks he's not as short of a second year. That's what we're not even midway through. We're not even midway through the year.
That was going to be my point.
There's 10
7 games.
more games.
7 games, and this is what it looks like. And I think the Jacksonville game kind of magnified things a little bit.
Yep.
Not just because it was in London. That's not important to me. I think it's important to Kraft, but because that team stunk. That team was about to fire their coach. That team was thinking about benching their quarterback.
Yep.
He has his best game against them. It gives Doug Peterson life, at least for a couple more weeks. I mean, he might still not survive the year, but they beat the Patriots. They beat them pretty soundly, especially after the Patriots got out to that good start. So now you're looking at a team that has already fired their coach with the Jets coming up on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tennessee, who stinks. They're trading away wide receivers. If you lose those, like that's a 1-8. And it's two other teams that aren't great.
Yeah.
Two teams with losing records that you're playing.
And I would wager on in the meantime, beyond just what's happening on the field, I would wager on in the meantime, Mayo says something else where he has to put his foot in his mouth.
Talks today.
It might happen in like 2 minutes, Keefe. He's about to hit the podium. I'm sure he's going to be asked about Bill Belichick and all these things.
We'll be all over it.
And we'll be reacting to it. So, like, he might have to correct himself today. And they'll probably have another off-field incident. Okay. I'd wager on them having another off-field incident and Mayo having to correct himself at least a couple of times based on the way this year is going.
Yeah.
I think that's an easy bet.
Well, hopefully nobody asks them about the food in London because then people are going to get really upset.
That's cringe-inducing, Keefe. That's dumb is what that is.
Right, I can go to the next question.
Says the aggregator at Nesson and the guy who got kicked off the challenge.
Guys on the high horse. Yeah, the challenge guy from the clouds. At least the other guy covers the sport.
I love the challenge. Don't make me turn against the challenge, Vinny. No. But I will. But that's the thing. You come after Keefe, I'll turn against the challenge.
There are villains on the challenge, though, Jones. You can't root for everybody.
That's a good point. You know, for every
CT,
you have bananas or a Wes. It's
Correct.
True. Correct. And you got Vinny ripping girls' shirts off. 617-779-7937. Coach is in New Hampshire. Hello, Coach.
Yeah, a little different perspective on the Mayo hiring. If I'm a college coach or an NFL assistant, don't we live in a world where if you put in the work, you should be given an opportunity to advance yourself? Like we worry, the NFL worries about the Rooney Rule and making sure everyone adheres to it. But how about a rule for Robert Kraft where, hey, I'll tell you what, you may own the team, but you got to at least interview 2, 3, 4, 5 candidates. I think it was a sham, and I'm really upset about it.
Yeah, so I don't know if the league should mandate it. Like, I'm okay with them mandating having to interview minority candidates. Like, I'm okay with that as a rule because traditionally they weren't getting jobs.
I think for the sake of your franchise, though, you should interview, even if it's sort of like, hey, we want Mayo.
So I agree with this. This is what I was just going to say. You don't need a rule for it in this case, but Kraft should have said, look, Jerod, we think you're the guy. We're going to make you interview, and we're going to interview some other What was the harm in that? Like, what was the harm in interviewing some other candidates along with Mayo?
Especially in this scenario where you had one coach for 20 years and you decided it was time to move on from him, which I agreed with. But then your replacement is a guy who only played here and only coached here. Like, you're not
expand your horizons a little bit.
Correct. Like, nothing else, no other outside philosophies at all. We're just like, we know Bill's the problem, and we know Jerod, who has only coached with or played for Bill Belichick. It's not even like he played a season somewhere else or coached all year somewhere else. No. They're like, oh, he worked in the corporate world. I'm like, what, with any offensive coordinators?
What did he learn there?
Did he have any defensive coordinators? Like, who do you work with? Like, just business people. You're like, all right, great.
Yeah.
So that part, I feel like you're letting yourself down a little bit. Like, you have an opportunity to hear some other voices and some other ideas on how to do things.
Or you can just go to Israel and just listen to whoever's on that trip and pick your next coach. That's a good plan.
Put it in a contract too that you have to hire him.
Correct. So this is not a second guess. I actually feel like most Patriots fans, I don't want to say all, I think most Patriots fans felt that was a silly, foolish process, and we all saw it in real time.
Agreed.
We're like, just open it up and interview outside. You can still hire Mayo if you think he's the best guy at the end of the day.
No, I agree. I think 50% of the fans wanted Belichick to stay, 50% wanted him gone, give or take a percentage or two, and then nobody was thrilled with Mayo. It was either you and I had the thought, many others as well, somebody outside of the tree, find an offensive guy, and then others said Mike Vrabel. I'm like, all right, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Nobody was really clamoring for Jerod Mayo to be the head coach. And now here we are 7 weeks into the season, and you're like, I wonder how they feel about it now.
Again, Bedard says he's not assured a second season.
Oof.
Florio says he could talk his way out of a job.
Oh, boy.
In a related story, he'll be talking soon.
Ew.
We'll see what he has to say here on Jones and